You're allowed to feel everything, but you're not obligated to obey any of it. That's the quiet power we forget. We assume that because a wave of anger hits us, we must ride it. That because fear shows up, we must retreat. That because someone hurt us, we must retaliate. But the Stoics saw things differently. They believed emotion is not the enemy, but our reaction to it often is. Your emotions are real, yes, but they are not commands. They are messengers, not masters. They arrive without asking, but whether they stay and what they lead you to do, that's your choice. The modern world teaches us to express everything, to act on every impulse, to let emotion lead. But emotion without direction is chaos, and chaos, repeated often enough, becomes a personality. This episode isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about rethinking the power you give it. It's about learning to observe your emotions, not become them. To respond with reason, not react with impulse. To reclaim the space between stimulus and action, and in that space, choose who you will be. Let's explore the art of emotional control, not through denial, but through awareness, through mastery, through choice. 1. Feelings are visitors. Don't let them rule. Emotions arrive without warning. A comment triggers anger. A memory stirs sadness. A moment of silence brings anxiety. It happens in an instant, like an unexpected knock at the door. And too often we don't just answer. We let the feeling walk in, sit down, and take over the entire house. We let it rearrange the furniture, change the temperature, and speak for us. But here's what the Stoics understood. Emotions are visitors. They are not landlords. They don't own the space. You do. There's a quiet strength in remembering this, because it doesn't mean you reject what you feel. That's not the Stoic way. It means you welcome the emotion with awareness. You say, I see you. I understand why you're here. But I decide what happens next. That gap, that inner pause, is where emotional maturity is born. Most people don't realize how quickly a fleeting feeling becomes a fixed identity. You feel irritated, and now you're an angry person. You feel insecure, and now you think you're broken. But emotions, like weather, pass. Unless we build homes out of them, the Stoic does not build his identity on the passing clouds. He observes them, lets them move, and stays rooted in what doesn't change: values, reason, choice. Epictetus taught that it's not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The same is true for emotions. Anger is not dangerous in itself. It's what we do with it that causes damage. Fear is not failure, but running from it without thought is. When you mistake emotion for truth, you surrender your power. But when you treat emotions as visitors, you can meet them at the door with grace, curiosity, and perspective. And let's be honest, some feelings will overstay their welcome. Resentment lingers, guilt echoes, shame clings. But even these aren't permanent. They only grow when you feed them, when you replay the stories they whisper. The Stoic approach is not to fight those feelings. It's to stop nourishing them, to let them fade by choosing a different focus, a different response. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You're not denying that the emotion exists. You're denying it the throne. You're not ignoring the storm. You're choosing not to live under it. And that's a powerful shift. One that doesn't happen once, but through daily practice. Every time an emotion arrives, you get the chance to decide, will I host this, or will I observe and release? Think of how differently life would feel if you treated every emotion like a passing guest. Some bring lessons, some bring warnings, some simply remind you you're alive, but none of them have the right to dictate your behavior unless you hand them the keys. So the next time anger knocks, pause. The next time anxiety shows up, notice. The next time sadness sits beside you, listen without losing yourself in it, because feelings are visitors. Let them come, let them go, but don't let them rule. 2. Respond, don't react. There's a moment, brief, almost invisible, between what happens to you and what you do next. That space, that breath, is where your entire life can change, because in that pause lies the difference between reacting and responding. One is impulsive, emotional, immediate. The other is deliberate, intentional, wise. The first costs you peace. The second protects it. Reaction is easy. It's primal. Someone insults you. You snap back. You feel offended. You shut down. You're overwhelmed. You lash out, disappear, or numb yourself. Reaction gives your emotion full control of the wheel. It doesn't ask, is this helpful? Or, does this align with who I want to be? It just acts. Fast, loud, often recklessly. But response is conscious. It's a decision. It acknowledges the emotion, but it doesn't surrender to it. It recognizes the fire, but it doesn't throw fuel on it. The Stoics understood this distinction clearly. They taught that emotional control isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about learning to pause, and in that pause, to reclaim the power of choice. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, and illness, and yet his writings reflect a man who rarely reacted. He responded. He trained himself daily to meet difficulty not with drama, but with discipline. His meditations are filled with reminders to himself. Don't be controlled by anger. Don't be owned by praise. Return to what you know. Choose reason. Think about your own life. How many regrets were born not from deep thought, but from quick reaction? How many relationships were strained because of something said in a heated moment? How many opportunities were lost because of fear disguised as urgency? Responding doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean tolerating injustice or hiding your truth. It means choosing your stance with clarity instead of chaos. It means asking yourself, what would I do here if I wasn't afraid? What choice reflects my highest self, not just my current emotion? Here's the truth. You're not obligated to participate in every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands you. You don't need to match the intensity of someone else's emotion. Sometimes the strongest response is stillness. But this takes practice. It takes conditioning your nervous system to pause instead of panic, to create space instead of pressure. One way to train this is through breath. When something triggers you, don't respond immediately. Take 3 slow breaths. Let your body catch up with your intention. Let your thoughts settle so your wisdom can rise. That pause is where the power lives. And over time, this becomes your default. You stop being reactive. You become grounded. People will feel the difference. They'll notice that you're not easily pulled, not easily provoked. And more importantly, you'll notice it. You'll respect the strength that comes from moving with purpose, not pressure. Reaction is the voice of the moment. Response is the voice of who you're becoming. So next time you feel the heat rise, pause, breathe, ask, who do I want to be right now? And then choose, not from the feeling, but from the truth. 3. Emotion is energy guided by thought. Emotion is not weakness. It's not a flaw to fix or an obstacle to overcome. Emotion is energy, raw, powerful, alive. It's the mind's way of signaling that something matters, but that energy, left unguided, becomes chaotic. It burns instead of fuels. It explodes instead of directs. That's why the Stoics never said, "Don't feel." They said, "Guide what you feel, shape the current, aim the fire." Every emotion you feel is energy looking for direction. Anger, for example, is a natural signal. It arises when something feels violated, unjust, or out of alignment. But untrained, it becomes destruction. Trained, it becomes courage. The difference isn't the emotion itself, it's the thought guiding it, the belief behind it, the story you attach to it. This is why the Stoics placed so much weight on perception, because what you think, deeply, instinctively, automatically, determines how your energy moves. If you believe someone is attacking your worth, your energy turns to defense. But if you believe they're acting from pain, not power, that same emotion becomes understanding, even strength. The external event didn't change. Your interpretation did. And with it, the quality of your energy changed too. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And often what we call emotion is just our imagination left unchecked. We think someone's silence means rejection, and we feel hurt. We think failure means worthlessness, and we feel shame. But behind every emotion is a thought, a filter, a meaning we've chosen, often unconsciously. And if we don't examine those thoughts, our emotions rule us. So what do we do instead? We slow down, we name the emotion, then ask, what belief is guiding this feeling? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it mine, or something I've inherited? That shift alone, from unconscious reaction to conscious examination, transforms emotion from a storm to a signal. It doesn't remove the energy, it reroutes it. Imagine this. You feel fear before a conversation. Old habit says run, avoid, overthink. But you pause, you ask, what is this fear protecting me from? Is this fear pointing to a truth I need to face? What if this isn't fear at all, but anticipation? In that moment, the same emotion that once paralyzed you now propels you. Emotion is not the enemy of logic. Emotion is a force that, when guided by reason, becomes wisdom in motion. It helps you connect, express, act, not impulsively, but powerfully. But that requires you to lead the emotion, not be led by it. And this is where daily training comes in. The more you practice reflecting on your emotions, not in the heat of the moment, but afterward, in calm, the more fluent you become in your own emotional language. You begin to recognize patterns, question stories, redirect energy, and over time, that becomes your new default. Not suppression, not explosion, but guidance. So remember, your feelings are energy, and your thoughts are the compass. If you want to change how you feel, change how you interpret, change how you frame, change what you believe about the moment you're in, because a fire without direction destroys, but a fire with focus illuminates everything. 4. Control your interpretation to master your feeling. What happens to you is one thing. What you tell yourself about it, that's something else entirely. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that most of our suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from the meaning we assign to them. That's where emotion takes root, not in the facts, but in the filter. And the more control you gain over that filter, the more power you gain over your emotional life. Let's be honest, we don't respond to life as it is. We respond to the story we're telling ourselves about it. Someone cancels plans, and one person shrugs it off thinking, they're probably overwhelmed. Another thinks, they don't value me, and spirals into resentment. Same event, different interpretation, and that interpretation determines the emotion, the reaction, and ultimately the identity that forms from it. The Stoics called this our judgment, the mental framing that sits between experience and emotion. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But dig deeper and you realize how you react depends on how you interpret. Control the interpretation and you master the response. This doesn't mean you lie to yourself or sugarcoat reality. It means you refuse to jump to conclusions that disempower you. It means you choose the interpretation that serves your growth, not your ego, not your fear, and not your past wounds. If something hurts, you acknowledge it. But then you ask, what else could this mean? What's a more constructive way to frame this? For example, failure. You can interpret it as a sign that you're not good enough, or as feedback for improvement. Rejection. You can see it as proof that you're unworthy, or as protection from misalignment. Conflict. You can see it as an attack, or as a mirror showing you where you're still reactive. Each interpretation generates a different feeling, and each feeling leads to a different action. That's the power of inner framing. Here's the difficult part. Most interpretations are automatic. They're shaped by old pain, by conditioning, by fear. You don't choose them unless you pause, unless you step back and examine them. That's where your power lies. In becoming the observer of your mind, not just the actor inside it. So, how do you train this? Begin with one habit. When a strong emotion arises, stop and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what just happened, factually? Second, what story did I attach to it? Third, is there another way to see this that gives me clarity, not chaos? This alone, practiced daily, can rewire your entire emotional system. Because when you choose your interpretation, you don't just manage feelings, you reshape them. You no longer say, I feel this way because of what happened. You say, I feel this way because of how I'm choosing to see it. That is emotional ownership. That is freedom. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's not just philosophy. It's a practical reminder that your mind is not a victim of circumstance. It is a lens. You can clean that lens. You can choose how to look. So ask yourself, are your emotions a reflection of truth or of an unchallenged narrative? Are you reacting to the event or to your version of it? Change the way you see, and you'll change the way you feel, not once, but every time. 5. Detach from impulse. There's a voice inside us that speaks before we think. It acts fast. It pulls us toward what's easy, what's familiar, what soothes the ego or avoids discomfort. That voice is impulse. And unless we learn to separate ourselves from it, to observe it without obeying it, we become its servant. We say things we don't mean. We do things we later regret. We chase moments of relief that create long-term pain. But the Stoics believed in something greater, choice. Not forced, not reactive, but intentional choice. And for choice to be real, impulse must be questioned. You have to create distance between what you feel and what you do. You have to learn to see the urge without becoming the urge. Impulse isn't evil. It's ancient. It's part of your nervous system, designed to protect you from danger or guide you toward reward. But the modern world isn't built for survival threats. It's built on emotional complexity. And the impulses that once kept us safe now keep us scattered, distracted, reactive. They tell us to scroll instead of sit still, to yell instead of breathe, to run from discomfort instead of facing what needs healing. The Stoic doesn't hate the impulse, he just doesn't trust it blindly. He knows that to build a life rooted in wisdom, he must become a watcher of himself. He creates a space inside, a place of awareness, where impulse is welcomed but not followed. Think of this. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your impulse says honk, yell, insult. But if you're aware, you catch that voice. You observe the heat rising, and you detach. You tell yourself, this is just my nervous system reacting. But I'm not here to be ruled by reflex. And you choose differently. You choose peace. Not because you're weak, but because you've trained yourself to pause. Detaching from impulse isn't about suppressing your humanity. It's about becoming a better steward of it. It's saying, I feel the urge. I see the desire. I acknowledge the craving. But I will act only from clarity, not from chaos. And here's the beautiful part. The more you detach, the stronger you become. Each time you choose response over impulse, your mind rewires. Your body learns to trust stillness. Your emotions settle, and what once felt uncontrollable becomes manageable. Not perfectly, but consistently. One way to build this muscle is through micro moments. Every time you feel the pull, pause, name it. This is frustration. This is envy. This is insecurity. Naming it gives you space from it. It turns the flood into a stream, something you can navigate instead of drown in. And don't judge the impulse. Understand it. Ask, where is this coming from? Is it fear? Is it habit? Is it ego? Because once you understand the source, the urgency often dissolves. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That includes mastery over the inner signals that try to hijack our behavior. The Stoic path isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about recognizing that emotion isn't a command, and impulse isn't identity. So the next time you feel pulled to react, to run, to escape, try this instead. Pause, witness, breathe, and remind yourself, you are not your first instinct. You are what you choose after it. 6. Practice the pause. Between what triggers you and how you respond, there's a space. And in that space lies your freedom. But that space doesn't expand on its own. You have to train it. That's the pause. The moment you interrupt the automatic and choose the intentional. The moment you say, wait, before I speak, act, decide, let me come back to myself. The pause is not silence, it's mastery. It's not inaction, it's precise action, delayed just long enough for awareness to catch up with emotion. In modern life, we're trained to move fast, reply instantly, decide quickly, post before we've even processed. But what the Stoics understood is that speed often bypasses wisdom, and wisdom lives in the pause. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he was, in essence, practicing the pause on paper, reflecting, slowing down his mind, not reacting to power, stress, or flattery, but returning to principle. He was building a mind that doesn't rush to judgment, doesn't get pulled into every storm, a mind that holds stillness, even under pressure. The pause doesn't need to be long. Sometimes it's just one breath, 1 second, one blink before the mouth opens, one beat before the decision is made. And in that pause, everything shifts. A hurtful word is replaced with patience. A defensive reaction becomes a question. A mistake is prevented before it's born. You don't stop the emotion, but you slow the story long enough to change its ending. Practicing the pause builds strength over time. In the beginning it feels unnatural. Your body still wants to react. Your ego wants to protect. But slowly, as you practice, the pause becomes a habit, a moment of space that lives inside you. Not because you suppress, but because you observe. You become the kind of person who is not easily moved, not easily thrown off balance, and people will feel it. Your presence changes. Your words carry weight. Your silence becomes intentional, not uncertain. Try this. The next time you feel emotion rise, don't act, don't reply, don't post, just pause. Place your awareness on your breath. Count to 3. Ask yourself, what would my wisest self do here? Not the version of you that's hurt, angry, or afraid, but the version that's clear, calm, and grounded. That's who the pause reconnects you with. And don't underestimate the power of small pauses. A pause before checking your phone. A pause before saying yes to something you don't mean. A pause before walking away from something that actually matters. These micro pauses, repeated daily, reshape your life. Seneca once wrote, "Anger, an acid that does more harm to the vessel than to anything it is poured upon." The pause protects the vessel, you. It keeps your clarity intact, your dignity untouched, your decisions aligned with who you truly want to be. So build your pause, practice it like a sacred art, because the more you return to that space, the more your life becomes a reflection of intention, not impulse. 7. Choose stillness over outburst. In the heat of emotion, stillness feels unnatural. When anger flares or frustration peaks, every part of you wants to move, to raise your voice, to defend, to act. Stillness feels like weakness, like doing nothing. But that's only because we've misunderstood what stillness really is. Stillness is not passive. It's not the absence of power. It's the highest expression of it. Because in the middle of chaos, stillness says, I don't need to be pulled into this. I don't need to fight every battle, prove every point, or match every storm with more noise. The Stoics saw this clearly. They knew that inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be chosen. Choosing stillness means stepping away from the instinct to explode. It means resisting the urge to win in moments that call for grace. It means understanding that an outburst might feel good for a second, but often leaves behind wreckage. Words you can't unsay, energy you can't take back. Relationships quietly damaged, not by deep wounds, but by repeated, unchecked reactions. Stillness gives you a different kind of power, not control over others, but control over yourself. The ability to hold your ground without raising your voice, to say less and mean more, to let the other person spiral and not mirror it. That's not silence from fear, it's silence from confidence, the kind that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it with noise. Let's be honest, we're conditioned to believe that if we don't speak instantly, we'll lose control, that if we don't respond with force, we'll be disrespected. But often, the opposite is true. The person who chooses stillness, especially when they have the strength to do otherwise, earns a different kind of respect. They're remembered not for how they reacted, but for how they didn't. This doesn't mean suppression. It means discernment. It means understanding that every emotion doesn't deserve expression, at least not immediately, and not in every direction. Some emotions are teachers. They ask to be listened to, not acted on. Stillness creates the space for that listening to happen. Think of stillness like a protective shell around your clarity. When life presses in, when people test you, when things go wrong, Stillness holds you together. It keeps you from unraveling. It gives you time to think, to breathe, to align your response with your values, not your impulses. Try this. In your next emotional moment, don't react. Sit with it. Let it rise and let it pass. Feel it fully, but let your response come from stillness, not heat. You'll notice something powerful. The emotion doesn't last as long as you feared, and your peace lasts longer than you expected. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water." That's what stillness is. Not escape, but anchored presence. So choose stillness, especially when outburst feels easier, especially when pride wants to speak, especially when the world expects you to lose control. Because when you choose stillness, you don't just avoid regret. You build presence, you build power, you build peace. 8. Reflect before you speak. Words are power. Once spoken, they can't be undone. They shape relationships, influence emotions, and reveal who you are, even more than your intentions do. And yet, most people speak on autopilot. They let emotion dictate tone. They let impulse choose the timing. And they forget. What you say in 5 seconds of anger can echo for years. The Stoics knew the danger of speaking without thought. They weren't advocates of silence for its own sake. They were advocates of measured speech. Words that are slow to rise, but strong in impact. Epictetus put it simply. First, learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. In other words, pause, reflect, and then choose, not just what to say, but whether to speak at all. When you speak from a place of unchecked emotion, the words often come out sharper than the truth. You defend when you don't need to. You attack when you meant to express. You push away the very people you want to connect with. But when you take even a few seconds to reflect, to ask, "Why am I saying this?" or "What will this actually create?" you shift the energy. Your voice carries wisdom, not just feeling. Reflection doesn't mean overthinking. It means alignment. It means making sure your words serve your values, not just your momentary emotion. It means checking. Is this true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Because not everything that's true needs to be said right now, and not everything you feel deserves to become someone else's burden. Think about how often conflict escalates, not because of what was felt, but because of what was said too fast. A misunderstanding, a tone, a single phrase that cut deeper than intended. If you had paused, reflected, taken a breath, maybe it could have been different. Maybe the relationship would have grown instead of cracked. This is why reflective speech is a form of emotional discipline. You hold the space between feeling and expression. You allow clarity to rise before words are released. You speak not to win or vent, but to build, to connect, to clarify, to move forward with integrity. Try this in your next conversation. When tension rises, don't respond immediately. Let the other person finish. Count in your head. Ask yourself, what is really needed here? Reaction or understanding? Often you'll realize your original response wasn't necessary, or you'll find a better one that holds firmness without hostility, honesty without harm. Over time, this habit of reflective speech becomes a trait. People begin to trust your words more, not because you say what they want to hear, but because you speak with intention. You're not just reacting, you're choosing. And that choice builds presence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly, if it's not necessary to speak, it's necessary not to speak. That wasn't silence out of fear, it was silence out of respect, for others, for the moment, and for the kind of person he was trying to become. So before you speak, reflect, not forever, not to escape expression, but just long enough to ask, is what I'm about to say worthy of who I want to be? If it is, speak it with strength. If it's not, choose the higher power. Silence. 9. You are not your anger. Anger is loud. It shows up fast. It demands to be felt, to be expressed, to be obeyed. And in the moment, it feels like truth, like justice, like power. But the Stoics taught us something vital. Anger is not who you are. It's something that visits you, something that passes through you. You are not your anger. And the more you remember that, the more freedom you reclaim from it. Most people confuse anger with identity. They say, I have a temper, or that's just how I am, as if anger is a permanent trait. But it's not. Anger is a response, often to hurt, to fear, to perceived disrespect, or loss of control. It feels powerful, but it's often protecting something much more vulnerable beneath the surface. And if you never question it, it becomes your mask, your pattern, your prison. The Stoics didn't deny that anger exists, but they didn't glorify it either. Seneca wrote entire essays warning about its danger. He called it a temporary madness, and he was right. Because when anger takes over, you forget yourself. You lose clarity. You say things that don't match your deeper values. You act in ways that don't reflect your actual strength, only your emotional volatility. But what if, the next time anger rises, you didn't merge with it? What if you said, this is anger, I feel it, but it's not who I am? That simple distinction between the emotion and the self is the beginning of liberation. It gives you space, it gives you options, it gives you the chance to decide, do I act from this, or do I respond from who I want to be? Anger wants speed, but you can slow it down. Anger wants reaction, but you can redirect it. Anger wants to convince you that it's the voice of truth, but often it's just the voice of pain in disguise. When you observe it, instead of obeying it, you begin to see it clearly, not as a flaw to suppress, but as a signal to investigate. Ask yourself, what is this anger really about? What am I trying to protect? What fear sits underneath this reaction? Because beneath the heat, there's often a wound, and healing that wound requires awareness, not aggression. It requires listening, not lashing out. And here's the most important part. Refusing to act from anger doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Anyone can react. Anyone can shout. But the person who can hold that fire, study it, and choose not to let it burn everything down, that person is powerful. So the next time you feel anger rise, don't fear it. Don't feed it. Don't become it. Just see it. Name it. Hold it in your awareness like a flame in your palm, something you respect, but do not let consume you. Because you are not your anger, you are the one who watches it and chooses something better. 10. Calm is power. We often associate power with volume, with sharpness, presence, dominance, but true power, the kind that lasts, is often silent. It's the person who doesn't need to raise their voice to command attention. The one who doesn't need to react to prove control. The one who carries a stillness so grounded it settles the room without trying. That is calm, and that is power. Calm isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It's standing in the middle of the storm and knowing that the storm is not in you. It's being fully aware of the chaos around you, but not letting it invade your center. The Stoics revered calm not as a trait for the passive, but as a discipline for the strong. Because it's easy to explode, it's easy to get swept away. But calm, true, earned calm, requires restraint, awareness, and a deep commitment to inner peace. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet he constantly reminded himself not to be upset by trivial things, not to let the external dictate the internal. Why? Because he knew that losing your calm is the fastest way to lose your clarity, your judgment, and your integrity. When you lose calm, you lose access to your best self. Calm is not just emotional, it's strategic. It lets you see clearly while others are distracted by noise. It lets you act from reason when others are driven by impulse. It gives you the patience to wait, to listen, to observe. And in that observation, you find your advantage. You don't need to compete with the world's pace. You set your own, and that makes you untouchable. But calm isn't something you turn on like a switch. It's something you cultivate through habits, through discipline, through the quiet decision, moment after moment, to not give in to the emotional pull of the moment. It's choosing silence over reaction, breath over impulse, principle over pride. And here's the paradox. The more calm you cultivate, the more influence you carry, because people feel it. They trust the person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't panic, who doesn't let emotion drive every move. That kind of presence is magnetic. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. So if you want real power, not temporary dominance but lasting strength, build calm. Build it in your morning routine. Build it in your conversations. Build it in how you respond to challenge, to disrespect, to uncertainty. Not by suppressing what you feel, but by refusing to be owned by it. Calm is not weakness. It's not withdrawal. It's not indifference. Calm is focused. Calm is clear. Calm is a quiet, unshakable kind of strength. The kind that makes people wonder how you're so steady in a world that moves like a storm. So when in doubt, don't raise your voice, lower your shoulders, breathe, and remember, calm isn't a lack of feeling, it's the choice to feel without falling apart. You are not your first thought. You are not your worst reaction. You are the space between stimulus and response. And what you choose to do with that space defines everything. Emotion is natural. It will rise. It will pulse through your chest, tighten your breath, blur your vision. But it doesn't have to speak for you. It doesn't have to guide your hands, your words, your future. The Stoic path is not about being less human. It's about becoming more aware, more intentional, more in control of what you give your energy to. This episode wasn't about suppressing how you feel. It was about reclaiming your power to decide what your feelings become. Do they become wisdom or just noise? Do they lead you closer to who you want to be or further away? The choice is always yours. In every breath, in every pause, in every moment you feel the wave rise and choose not to drown in it. If this episode brought you clarity, strength, or even one quiet pause where before there would have been chaos, hold on to that, build on it, share it, and most of all, live it.